What up guys, Super Metal 983 here bringing us another episode of Super Metal Recommendations. Now I know I said in the last episode that I had a few episodes planned for the upcoming future and they were going to be out fairly soon. Well, you can see how long that lasted, but yeah, I have got quite a few releases to talk about with these in Super Metal Recommendations episode in the upcoming future. But for now, I just thought I'd, crack at the camera and talk about another 5 releases that I've been listening to lately, or stuff that I feel like you need to check out, the objective of these episodes, But I've made myself a fresh cup of tea because, quite frankly, I've got a head cold at the moment and it's kicking my little booty at the moment, So apologies if your hearers keep on sniffing and stuff, and I stumble on words, but that's a norm for my videos anyway. But let's crack on with the 5 releases that we've got here. And we're going to start things off with some death metal, and some really gnarly death metal if you ask me, and something that I think, an artist that I feel doesn't get appreciated a lot these days, and I feel like that is criminal personally, because they're such a sick band. But yeah, the first one's got to go to Bleeding the False by Aeon, which is this one right here. Now, I was toying with putting this one in, or their other album, what's it called? Rise to Dominate, I believe it's called. I was toying between the two because I love both albums, but I chose this one because it's the one I've listened to the most recently, and quite frankly, this is some sick death metal, and quintessential, if you ask me. If you're a fan of Vital Remains, Deicide, any of those kind of evil sort of sounding bands like Anthropomorphia that really have a anti-religious sort of theme to them, then this is definitely an artist for you. If you haven't heard them, make sure you do so, and I'd be surprised if you're into any of those bands and you haven't heard this artist, then come on, get with the times. But yeah, this is an absolutely fantastic album. It's really riff heavy, it's gnarly, but the production is quite old school sounding. I mean, it was released back in 2005, so you can imagine it not being as crispy clean as, say, modern death metal sounds, But I feel like this has a really gnarly, gritty edge to it, but it's really dark and sinister sounding, and quite frankly, I think it's one of the most underrated albums in death metal, if you ask me. So make sure you check out Bleeding the Falls by Aeon if you want some quality kind of anti-religious death metal sort of stuff, but underneath it's really gnarly and kind of has a verge of blackness behind it without adding any black metal elements, but it's just really dark and sinister, so make sure you check it out. Awesome album if you ask me. Then moving on, we have an album that I did want to talk about in these Super Metal Recommendations, and this one is a fairly recent one to add to the list of albums that I want to talk about, but I felt like this one deserves this justice if you ask me. But this next one is Dragged into Sunlight with Hatred for Mankind, which is this one right here. Now, if you know me, you'll know I'm not a massive fan of Dragged into Sunlight. Like, when I first saw them at, I believe it was Lords of the Land Festival, I wish I could have liked them. They had so much potential going for them, but the whole back to the audience thing, and the loads and loads of smoke and fog machines and stuff like that, on top of the music, I felt like the music was meh personally, and then that atmosphere and the stage presence thing was just, it wasn't really for me, in all honesty. And then I think when I got back, I decided to check out their last album, which is their second full length. I can't remember what it's called off the top of my head, but honestly, I wasn't impressed by it. I thought it was just boring personally, so I didn't really bother to check out their debut, or I might have done and found it just as boring. So I thought, they're not for me. They are one of the bands that I really dislike personally. But yeah, but for some reason I decided to give this album a shot, and I think it was because I was watching Wyattxhim's one of his videos at some point, and he was talking highly about this album. I thought, you know what, I'm going to give it another opportunity, and I was in a really pissed off sort of mood. I just wanted some gnarly music just to get us chilled out and just, get us back to me normal self, basically. But I decided to stick this album on, and wow, did this blow me away. This is easily one of the most hate-filled black and death metal albums I have heard in a long fucking time. But not to just say that they are black and death metal, they take a lot of elements from the likes of black metal, straight up death metal, doom metal, sludge, grindcore, and even a little bit of noise thrown in there for good measure. You know, just all that culminating into one unique sounding artist that is Dragged Into Sunlight. I think this album definitely, I must have overlooked it, we overlooked it, but now I have to say that this is an absolutely fantastic album. It's definitely an album you don't listen to just to chill out to. This is an album that if you're in a pissed off mood, then this is the perfect album for you. And I think the atmosphere on this album is just very necro, very disturbing and filthy, but it's just filled with so much anger and animosity that it's its own unique character, if you ask me. I've never heard an album so eviscerating and just annihilating in all my life, and quite frankly, this is an absolutely incredible album. If you haven't heard this, or maybe you've seen Dragged Into Sunlight like me and you weren't a fan of what they're doing live, then definitely give this album a shot, because this is absolutely fantastic. And I guess now that I've listened to it, I kind of understand the kind of concept behind it, the mystery behind it, sort of thing. But yeah, make sure you check out this album. It's absolutely fantastic. It's very gnarly stuff. Very gnarly. And then, next up, we're going to move on to some deathcore. And this one, I've been wanting to feature in Super Metal recommendations, I think, since the beginning, really. And I decided to revisit these not too long ago, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to feature this in the next one. And this is I Shall Devour with their, I believe this is their debut EP, entitled Manipunation, I believe it's called. Yeah, I got this through Chugcore back in 2017, along with their debut album, and their debut album is absolutely fantastic. If you haven't checked that out, make sure you do so. But this was my first exposure to the band, and I first heard the song, the third song, because it's only a 4-track EP, called Forever Imperfect, and I was literally blown away by the straight kick in of that groovy, heavy riff, and I was just like, ooh, that is so fucking gnarly and just crushing sounding, and I was just like, yeah, I need to check this out. And I checked out the EP itself. It's a pretty short EP, but honestly, this is an absolutely fantastic piece of deathcore, and like, I think this is really, really severely underrated. I've showed many people this band, and their debut album is fantastic as well. But I definitely say, if you're a fan of Thy Art Is Murder, or Molotov Solution, or Aversion's Crowd, then this is definitely for you. That really low-tuned, heavy, gritty, riffy deathcore that's kind of has that really thick, beefy sound that you would get from the likes of Molotov Solution and Aversion's Crown, for example. So that, if that sounds up your alley, then definitely check this out. It's an absolutely fantastic little EP. I might feature the debut album in a future Super Metal recommendations, because that one is a fantastic album in general. But yeah, make sure you check this out. I believe they're working on a new release for the upcoming future. I could be wrong, but yeah, this is absolutely fantastic. If you want some quality deathcore to check out in the underground, then definitely check this one out. I believe Chugcore sold out of those and the debut album, so if they're repressed, then I'll link it down below, but we'll see what happens in the upcoming future. Now, this next one is the inspiration for the thumbnail for this video, and this one is quintessential black metal, if you ask me. This is just absolutely incredible and become my favourite album of these guys. But this is Abigor with Opus IV. Now, if you may remember, the first Super Metal recommendations I featured, I believe it's their second latest album, if I'm not mistaken, Le Motif, Lucifer, I believe it's called. Well, the Cream one, I can't remember its title off the top of my head, but that was the one I featured in that video. I guess I was kind of in the hype, the honeymoon phase of just getting it on CD and being blown away by it at the same time. But as time goes on, I've checked out a couple more of their releases, including their last album and a few of their previous ones as well. But one of the ones that followed up to that Super Metal recommendations was this one that I checked out, and I believe it was from Brainsmasher showing the vinyl off, and I thought, I need to get that on CD, and it took me a while to get it for a cheap price, but yeah, I finally got it, and quite frankly, this is some quintessential black metal, if you ask me. It's very mystical and very creepy sound. It's kind of got in some elements, it kind of reminds us of old school, like the first couple of albums of Cradle of Filth, for example. That really mystical, kind of hazy, in other words, like very I don't know, it's very unique sounding stuff, but then the black metal elements are some of the most gnarly and as if, I know it's quite a elusive term, but like it's a bit of a heavy black metal release, and I feel like this album definitely encapsulates that very well. I think the overall dark and sinister atmospheres that are on here, they create this really ritualistic sort of vibe in there on this album. Definitely is what makes it, in my opinion, one of the best black metal albums I've ever heard, and it's definitely a gem, should we just say, in my collection. And I feel like I know Abigor have got a lot of albums under their belt, but I feel like personally they don't get highly talked about these days, and quite frankly, from the first Super Metal recommendation to now, I still don't think they get their justice deserved. So if you want some quality black metal to check out, then check out Abigor's Opus IV, which is easily my favourite album of theirs now. I just love this album. It's absolutely fantastic. So if you want some quality black metal, check out Abigor, and yeah, just be amazed if you ask me. And then we'll get to the final release that I want to talk about in this Super Metal recommendations, and this one is probably, the latest one to add to this list, and I had to talk about this for a number of reasons. One, because I feel like it's an underrated release for my personal opinion, and quite frankly, these guys have announced that they've called it quits, and I've recently seen them on their farewell tour with Last Hounds, and make sure you check out Last Hounds as well, by the way. But I've been a fan of these guys for many years, and I felt like, you know what, I feel like they deserve a good send-off, and I'm going to put this as my main recommendation in the next Super Metal recommendations. I'm talking about CARCER City with their debut album, their third and I believe last album, entitled Infinite Unknown, which is this one here. And as you can see, I got it signed by the guys. I got it signed at the gig, which I was really, really thankful for. But anyway, yeah, this is, in my opinion, one of the most quintessential and best metalcore albums to come out of the UK metalcore and metal, let's say a metal and core scene, shall we just say. I think this is absolutely incredible. If you like your progressive metalcore, like for example Heart of a Coward, for example, you will find yourself something to love about these guys. Like, it's even got a bit of a kind of Periphery-esque in there for good measure, and quite frankly the songwriting on this album is just something to behold, if you ask me. It's definitely one of their strongest releases. In fact, I think this is their strongest release that they released. I mean, if you heard the songs, the title track, Sovereign, Perceptions, Just Before the Dawn, The Night is Darkest Just Before the Dawn, sorry, that's a long title, Truth Part 1 and Part 2, but yeah, honestly, this is an absolutely fantastic album, if you ask me. If you want some quintessential metalcore, then you need to hear this album, released under Stay Sick Recordings. I know it's going to be hard to find in the upcoming future, so you need to find it. I scored this on eBay not too long ago for a fairly decent price, and I was happy I got it just before the tour, because then I could get it signed. But yeah, it's really riffy, it's very melodic, it's very picturesque and beautiful, especially on the sophomore sort of melodic choruses and interlude sort of elements on there. Definitely create this really rich and powerful atmosphere that this, I feel, is definitely one of the best metalcore albums, and it's something that I return to quite a fair bit, and I feel like you just need to hear this, if you ask me. If you're into metalcore, you'll find something to love about CARCER City. I'm going to miss these guys. They did a final EP called Silent War. If you haven't heard that, make sure you do so as well, and make sure you check out their other material. But this, in my opinion, is the best in their discography. I'm going to miss them so much, and this album, it's an absolute gem in my collection and a grail. So make sure you check out CARCER City with their third album, I believe it is, called Infinite Unknown, released under Stay Sick Recordings. So excellent stuff, if you ask me. And also, I know I'm wearing the shirt, but I felt it was necessary. But yeah, there's 5 releases for you to check out. I've got some more coming up in the upcoming future. I'm not going to give a time frame on it, because, you know, I always feel miserably at that, but we'll see what happens in the upcoming future. I do plan to do a couple more, so I've got, I definitely want to do the more honourable mentions of 2018, for example, and there's a couple more that I do want to talk about, so we'll see what happens in the upcoming future. Obviously the honourable mentions one might be an XL one, we'll see what happens, but I'll see you until the next video, and remember, stay metal, and I'll see you later.